nobody ever sits in the front, and I saw there's like.
I mean, no, I'm so
No, it's fine. Like I was walking around before, and I'm like, all right, there's no chargers here, and then you see one, you're like, it's kind of far.
Yeah, that's why I didn't want to sit in the last row, but.
No, I totally get it.
And also we put all the coffee away, so.
I know, I got down there, in the expo, well, I was there earlier, right when they were starting to close everything up, and they're like, okay, we need to take the table away from you now. It was just a weird experience, like the carpet's being all rolled. I'm like, I feel like they just set it down yesterday. It just disappeared. But yeah, it's not normally that early.
And this is what I need caffeine the most.
I know. Yeah. I don't know. Are they?
I think that's what that camera's not for.
Yeah, it happened last year too. Last year?
Somewhere.
Yeah, it might have been the year before, and like none of the tech would work for the AR/VR. Like nothing, like the reflector did nothing worked. I'm like, okay, so you just have to just imagine what this would look like.
Yeah.
So this year I'm trying a totally different plan. So we'll see what
There's
happens.
a few people that come here in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, in my last section, we had a bunch of streaming videos and things.
I know. I always have kind of a backup plan. So we'll see. Hi there.
Hi, I'm Valerie.
Oh, Michelle.
Volunteer.
Nice to meet you.
Everything's all good here.
Yeah.
No need.
So far, so good. No, I mean, I wouldn't let them get too far away, but I know where they are.
They,
So.
yeah, they're right down the It's very,
Yeah.
it's very nice having them with you.
Yeah.
It really is.
I went low tech on this one.
Okay, so you're all good?
I'm good.
Everything's-
Yeah,
Okay,
thank
and
you.
I'll be out in the hallway if you need me.
Okay, thank you.
Sure thing.
I haven't finished the book yet.
You have it? That's
I
okay.
started reading on the plane back.
You know what? When I went to London for FET in January, I took a book with me, and I was like, who am I kidding? I'm not going to be awake on this flight overnight to read. My husband watched 3 movies. I woke up to eat, went back to sleep. I was exhausted. I did finish it when I came home, though. Can you see it? Yeah. BB.
I'm just wondering where you go to enter the code.
Oh, nearpod.com.
Nearpod.com.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm doing it a little bit different because I never know with the tech and all of the, and how long the wire is for me to do any demo of anything. So this time I thought, you know what, I'm just going to put it in, and the lights too. Sometimes you can't see because the lights are too bright on the screen. So I thought this time I'm putting it all into Nearpod. That way it's in your hands. You can look at it. Can't necessarily click on the links that are in it, but it's okay because I'll share a list of like resources and stuff too. And I guess we have like 3 minutes, or when that light goes on green on that recording. Yeah, and my friend Justin Aglio is doing his on AI in education, and this morning I was in a panel that he was moderating, and I said, oh yeah, and he said, oh, you should come to my session today. And I go, I can't because it's the exact same time as mine. And I actually originally wanted to see, because I love presenting with like my friends, especially like somebody like Justin, and I wanted him to come in, and I think I knew but kind of forgot that his was at the same time. I had it marked on my calendar, on my program. How do you do the Act 48? Where's the?
You have to fill out like a survey.
Yeah, but where do you access that?
Yeah,
It's on the program page or?
That's
Somewhere
where I
in the program,
looked.
You log in and then I have to check.
Yeah, because I clicked, there was one there, it was for like the micro-credentialing.
Yeah. So you have to like, skills, education skills that we see in the world.
Yeah.
Because AI, VR, is constantly changing.
Great topic.
So Pittsburgh history.
Pittsburgh history, yeah. Okay, well, I have a minute. I'm just gonna give you, I have like contact cards, and then one is just information about, a book that I wrote that just kind of came off. It has a lot of these ideas in it that I'm gonna share with you. But if you have questions or anything, I'm not necessarily an expert, definitely not an expert, but I would, connect you with somebody that didn't have the answer. I would find somebody that could give you the answer. Who would I say?
So you're from? Pittsburgh,
Right, I did.
oh, like general name or whatever, you could have a nickname or something.
Oh, okay, I didn't, really need some coffee at this point.
I know, everybody
You're a little
does.
ahead of me though,
I didn't realize
yes,
that it takes
these
just
guys
that.
experience.
Yes. And you know what, it's got more anymore coffee. And they took the hot chocolate and coffee station away from me.
Alright, so, it is, I did decide to use, if you, has anybody not used Nearpod before? Right, that's like, almost rarely happens. I was at a conference a couple weeks ago, and in the room there were probably I think like 60 people, and only 2 people had ever used Nearpod. So I always get so excited because I'm like, all right, something new. But what I did is I made my presentation in Google, and then do you all know that you can then use the little Chrome extension, like it just connects and takes all of your Google slides and pushes it right into the Nearpod, and then you can add different activities in. So the reason I did that, if you weren't in here, is because I've not always had the best luck when it comes to tech working at a conference, especially in a topic with like AR, VR, where you want to be able to like demo things or see pictures closely. So I decided to do it through Nearpod. That way you have it on your screen, so it's easier to see. If you have any questions, you know my contact information is on those cards. I'd be happy to give you some extra ideas, share some things that we've done. I don't actually share the slides because I have student pictures in them, and what I found from my own conference experiences is that like a lot of the times you get so many presentations, and did you ever go in your Google Drive and there's just like, you're like, whose stuff is this? They're just everywhere. So what I started to do, and I'll make sure that it's linked with the resources, and I started to just make a Google document of all the sessions that I do and just put everything in there. So if it's like, say it's Nearpod, if my students did projects with it, if I had some screenshots, I put it in one document that now is like, I don't know, 5 pages with everything hyperlinked that has all of the topics that I've talked about. That way you can click on that and it takes you exactly to the information that was in here, just it's on one document instead of like 65 slides that you don't necessarily need all of. So that made a lot more sense to do. But so if you want to join in, and I'm gonna have it up here, normally I wouldn't have the Nearpod presentation on the screen because I'd be kind of moving with my students. But it makes it a little bit easier, especially because since I'm using the iPad, I can demo some of the augmented virtual reality tools that I'll be sharing with you. The hour will go by really quickly, and this is a topic that I've presented on a lot in the past year. I've been studying artificial intelligence probably for the last 2 years. Augmented virtual reality I've been teaching in my classroom for the last probably 4 years now. So if you are just coming in, if you want to join in the Nearpod lesson, the code is on the top and I can read it for you as well. But it's VBUPF. So VBUPF. It just makes it easier because I know from back there, I'm not sure how clear it is because the lights, it might be hard to see. But I've been teaching Spanish and French, and actually first, my name is Rochelle Depose. That I should start with. I've been teaching Spanish and French at my school and also STEAM course at Riverview, which is about 20 minutes from here, for the last 24 years. And I teach a lot of things, aside from teaching Spanish, my STEAM course is about emerging technology. And what I love about it is I get to do like all these really cool things with my students, not just in my STEAM course, but also in my Spanish class. And so over the past probably 5 years, I've done a lot more work in these areas. Like I said, the AI, probably the last 2 years, the AR, VR over the past 4 to 5 years, exploring a lot more. And a good friend of mine, if you don't know, Jamie Donnelly is she has a website, ARVR and EDU. She has a Twitter channel Wednesday nights, 30 minutes, 9 o'clock, ARVR and EDU. She is absolutely phenomenal when it comes to ARVR. And so over the years, she comes up with an idea, she finds a tool, she says, hey Rochelle, what does this look like in the classroom? I bring it to my students, we try it out, and either they're like, oh, it was great, we love it, or, we didn't really like it, and then it facilitates a conversation. So it's kind of win-win. As a classroom teacher, I don't get to go out a lot and kind of explore a lot of these tools. She's a consultant and works with a lot of these companies, so I get a lot of the information and ideas from her. But I also spend a lot of time online and doing research as well. And with my students, they've been amazing the past 4 or 5 years. I've brought them, actually, this is probably the second year I've not had them with me at P&C to present. But over the past year, I've written a couple of different books where I share some ideas. And the one that is coming out, it's actually out now, but it's officially coming out in 2 weeks, is with ISTE, Chart a New Course. And I talk about a lot of the ideas about augmented virtual reality, things you can do in your classroom, to make it easier, because we never have enough time as teachers. So, just out of curiosity, and I'm going to hide your names, and if you've not ever used Nearpod, normally I wouldn't project this on the board. I would be moving around my classroom with my students. I kind of interact with them, get the feedback, but since not everybody has used Nearpod in this experience before, I thought, why not share it? So just out of curiosity, so when I give you examples for the different topics, I can kind of specify it based on role or what you teach. And I will tell you that the session is AI, AR, VR, so it is divided into those 3 categories. And I will go through a lot of different topics and tools. I'd rather you leave with a bunch of ideas that you can at least start with, rather than just have one idea and go, oh, I already totally knew how to use Nearpod, and so I didn't get anything from that. But in the room, let's see. And there's always somebody that I miss, because there are so many different roles or names for roles. But just to find out, what your experience is. So if you've not used Nearpod, you can just ask a quick question beginning of class. How did you feel about last night's assignment? Are there any questions that you have? Again, not that you would be showing this, hiding student names, and then you can get a quick idea and say, like maybe I said, did you understand the homework? And I look and like 80% of the students totally did not. Then I can go, well, I need to spend some time on that. It also shows students like, oh, I'm not the only one that didn't understand something. So in the room, we have a good mix. Answer, no instructional coaches. Okay. So I do have one more question for you, since I'm starting with artificial intelligence. It can be scary. One of the biggest things about AI, I know, is it going to replace teachers? What's it going to look like? How's it going to impact the world? What's our future going to be? And so that is probably, like I said, the number one question that comes up. And when I was at TCEA 2 weeks ago in Austin, the woman that presented, she did this session. It was like, the future is now, which I love, because that's the title of like my second book, and I'm like, I have to go and listen to her. But she had this thing that she found online where you type in your job, and it tells you like, what is the likelihood that your job is going to be replaced by artificial intelligence? And she typed in some different things like a financial advisor, food service, and a lot of those were replaced, but a teacher was like, not very likely, which was a good thing. Everybody in the room was like, oh, thank goodness. So no, okay, so that's great to know. There's some things like definitions. You might hear, like, I was surprised when I first started doing some research with AI of how much we use it in our daily lives. Like, you don't even think about it, and then you hear and you're like, wow, I had no idea. But the thing about it is it can take all of this information and data and everything that we kind of, as teachers, like let's say you're assessing students and you have all of that information, you have to process it, grade it, enter it into the computer, and that takes you hours upon hours, if not even more than one day sometimes. Artificial intelligence, that's one benefit for education, is it can take all of that and it can do that whole process in far less time. But the scary thing about it is now it can kind of like build on those skills. And so that's where people are like, oh, is it going to replace teachers, replace humans? And the thing about it as well is like there are humans that are programming the AI, that are making the algorithms, that are like kind of controlling that. But it's a machine, and so for me, I would always think of like Terminator, the movie I, Robot, if you ever seen any of those, where you're like, what's gonna happen with the robots? Machine learning, this goes back for, many years when I was taking courses at Pitt for translation, and Google Translate. Machine learning is part of artificial intelligence. It gets better as it goes. It learns over time. and it can find patterns. So that is something we interact with every single day as well. And then if you think about your brain, the neural network, your brain has billions and billions, like how quickly we can process thoughts and language and speech and our actions. But a neural network is like the computer goes through and it sorts all of these like billions and billions of data. Like, you know, look at a Google. Do you ever like Google something and you get like millions of results in like 0.24 seconds? Anybody remember the Dewey Decimal System looking for a book? The card catalog? Like, how much time did that take? And then you get back and you're like, oh my gosh, I looked through all these books and nothing. If you want to see something interesting, look up things like artificial intelligence, augmented reality, and see how many results you get. And then Google something like the Dewey Decimal System. It's unbelievable like how different it is. I mean, some of them come back with like 5 million results. So those are like the main 3 topics that come up with, I think that duplicated it, artificial intelligence. But one way, if you're looking to start this in your classroom with your teachers, there is this video series. It's called the Crash Course on AI. And I don't know if there will be sound. I don't know if you can play it on yours or not. But his name is Jabril, and he goes through and explains all of these different components. So if you want some kind of like, anybody teach like middle school, high school? I know I asked you on there, but if you want something like with my students in 8th grade, I pulled up this video, and again, all of these are linked in my documents. If you're like, I gotta find that, you could find it if you Googled it, like the Crash Course on AI, but I do have it linked. But he goes through like very basic, what is AI, what does it look like? He even has a robot as his like sidekick, and then he goes through more advanced topics like the neural network, machine learning, and then more applications of it, like what are algorithms, what are the things that we need to know or be wary of in terms of education. So I would highly recommend that. But looking at the future, and these came from a course I took with ISTE. Everybody familiar with ISTE? Like the International Society for Technology and Education. I took a course about a year and a half ago, and it was on artificial intelligence. And throughout the course, you work through different modules, you interact, and it takes you through lessons and things that you can do and learn from, but also that you can share with your students. And I thought that this graphic that was from those materials was really good, because when you're looking at education, and you think about like, well, what's it going to do for students? Like, how is it going to have an impact in my classroom? Thinking about how much time you get with every single student, like on a daily basis, if a class period is 40 minutes, do you have 40 minutes for each student that you can work with them every single day? No, so a big area is like looking at things like personalized learning, being able, and there are tools that are already out there, which is what's amazing about it. Has anybody heard of, I'd say Socrates. Anybody ever see Bill and Ted's Socrates? But there's one called Socrates, and it's a learning platform that functions using artificial intelligence, and what it does is it uses the AI, and in real time, it adjusts based on the student's response time, their responses, whether or not they're correct, and it charts a personalized path of learning for each student. So last spring, I used that kind of like with my 8th graders, and I said, okay, we're gonna try this out. They were a little bit upset because they were doing like 5th grade math at the point, but at that time, that was as far as they had. I think they had 2nd, 3rd, and 5th grade math. So I give to my students, and 3 of them started on the exact same activity, exact same first question, but based on their response time, whether or not they got it correct, it then shifted to something different for each one of them. And so that's how the AI kind of stepped in and was almost like, it was personalized in the learning, but it was able to give them that like one-on-one kind of an experience that charted its own path. One of my students actually got bored with it because it was 5th grade math, and so he took it and coded it. Do you ever see on The Price is Right, the Alpine climber goes up? Well, in this one activity, it was a horse, and if you got it correct, the horse, it was like a chariot race, it went forward. So the one student got a little bit bored, so instead he decided to code, so the horse ran off the screen instead. I'm like, okay, but that led to a really good conversation about coding and skills for the future. First I was like, should I be mad at this, or should I be like really impressed that this 8th grader just did this? Other things, collaborative learning, anybody use Alexa or Siri or any of those things, asking a question. So in our classrooms, maybe teaching Spanish, or maybe you're learning about something, and like the time it would take to go and get a book or a resource or pull up a video, artificial intelligence, virtual or voice assistants, you can ask the question. Now I know privacy is a huge concern when it comes to those, but that's just one possibility that you can use. even having students collaborate with peers from around the world, being able to find and navigate through like the whole wide world of technology to bring those opportunities in for our students is what it's going to be. Interesting statistics, in 1924, so there's a big concern, not just in education, but in the world of work, like that AI is going to take jobs. And it already is. Anybody that goes to, like, I was in London, we walked into McDonald's and there wasn't anybody there to take your order. Like, there was machines, facial recognition, there's all of these things being used in the world, but there's a concern that it's going to replace jobs. Well, in 1924, in New York, there were traffic cops in the city who their job, I think there were like 6,000 of them, their job was to manually change the traffic lights. So you had all the cars come through, cops would hit the lights, and they go. Well, what happened with having to do this? Automation. So you have the traffic lights don't need their jobs. So they lost their jobs, but they just shifted to a different job. CNET had an article back in September that not were they losing jobs, but they actually had to retain that many workers, or to retrain that many workers because of artificial intelligence. So they weren't letting the workers go. Robots, so just think 25% of jobs by 2030, robots are going to replace. What is the likelihood that some of our students are going to have coworkers that are robots? And my 8th graders were like, that would be so cool. Some of them were kind of afraid about that, but last year, there's a great book that I reference here later. It's called Teaching AI, if you've not heard of it. If you're interested in AI, and you're like, I don't know where to start, Teaching AI was written by Michelle Zimmerman, and last year at FETC, which is in Florida, she spoke about, like, it's not that it's going to replace jobs, it's going to replace, or it's going to create different types of jobs. So for us as teachers, the best thing we can do is to, like, give students opportunities where they can kind of, like, learn something, then unlearn something, and relearn something. Bless you. Another prediction, 46% growth in AI by 2021, so we're already in 2020, which is kind of scary how quickly time goes. But this I thought was interesting too. So these are just things I come across. So 70% of the companies thought minimum impact from AI. So it's like, who do you believe? But for us as educators, like just knowing what the statistics are, what it looks like, how we can use it in our classroom. So here are some ideas, and a lot of this, it'll go really quickly because with an hour, there's a lot of content to cover. But one thing you can start with is chatbots. Some schools, media specialists, libraries, instead, and I know funding, a lot of schools actually don't even have librarians anymore, which I think is like, oh my gosh, like how does that happen? And some of them now, because there isn't somebody there to answer the questions that the students have, because you know sometimes it's like the same question, they are creating and having chatbots. And not that the librarians or media specialists are, but they're actually having students create chatbots. So think about, like, one of the assignments that I had was, as a Spanish teacher, how could you use a chatbot? And I had to program one where it would kind of re-explain something I had covered in class, so then the students could interact with that. But that is, you know, machine learning is what it does, and many of us, if you go on a website every day, I mean, it pops up, you get the little pop-ups, they're chatbots. It's hard to tell when you're actually speaking to a human anymore, and there's a percentage out there of how much, I think like 45 or 50% of people interact with chatbots every day, and you don't actually realize it. Or if you call Apple, you're going, you think you're actually talking to a person, and it's actually not a person until finally it connects you to the store, and even then you're not 100% sure. How many of you use personal assistants? Alexa, Siri, Cortana, all of those? Ever have the awkward, like you say seriously, and then Siri talks? Some people use them in their classroom. There are some apps. One for Alexa is called Ask My Class, if anybody teaches elementary. It is an app, they are on Twitter, you can check them out. But it basically does, little things where a teacher would say, okay, ask my class to, I don't know, read for 5 minutes, or ask my class to get the books out. And you can program it to do that instead of the teacher saying it, or if you're using stations in your room. So it can be fun, it can be a little bit different for students, but again, like making sure that you know the privacy of it. Do any of you have Alexa in your home? Like, do you worry that it it's listening all the time?
I have it at school, but I turn it off, like the microphone. So
right.
When we want to ask it something, we'll turn it on.
Yeah.
Because of that. We've had it start talking to us while we're having a conversation.
I know, I have a friend named Sarah, and whenever I start to talk, I hear Siri across the room, or like Alexa. My husband will, I only usually listen to music for when I put it on, and he'll always say, Alexis. And I said, it's not going to turn, like, you're not even using the right name. It's like Alexa. He says Alexis. But there's, back and forth. A friend of mine on Twitter, Julie Daniel Davis is her name, but she has this voice on education. She's on LinkedIn, she's on Twitter. She's doing a lot of work and research in this area on voice assistants. So if that's something where you're like, I'd like to learn more about that, that's a possibility. Other things, Google Translate. Anybody speaking a foreign language, I know a lot of people after they graduate high school or college, they'll say, oh, I had 4 years of whatever the language is, I don't remember anything. And truly, like, do we really need to remember all the language now? We have so many things. I mean, you can have live translation now based on you wearing your headset, the other person wearing, and it's translating right into your ears. Microsoft just did this new with OneNote. They have live captions where, everybody's familiar with like the join code like you do with Nearpod, but you can have a lesson where a teacher is presenting in OneNote and has a join code, and then the teacher is speaking in like English like I am. Students, whoever's in the classroom, can then enter the join code and can pick the type of language they want to transcribe to. That functions on Microsoft Translator, which is also tied in with the immersive reader. Has anybody used or heard of immersive reader? Another big thing with AI. So it's fascinating the capabilities that are there. The flip side of this is whether or not you like the translation capability, it also, then the upside of it is you look at accessibility for students and for understanding languages. And I know with me, I use a tool called Bunsey, and actually Nearpod has immersive reader now too. Having students who don't all speak English, and I spoke to a woman in Canada where 72% of the students and their families do not speak English, and the mix is like 42 different languages or something. Having that immersive reader where you have 60 plus languages and variations of some of them, being able to translate it is beneficial because then the message is being shared between the school and the students and their families. Video games. My students in my STEAM class, I thought they'd be really excited about the AI, AR, VR. They were like, we do this stuff, it's Snapchat. But when they found out that in the 1950s, gaming actually started to use some AI to enhance the experience, then they were really excited to kind of learn more about that on their own. So a lot of these things that we do, when I started to teach about it, we just have conversations. I was surprised, like Uber. How many of you use Uber or Lyft? Anybody? Yeah, it uses AI because it looks at like the traffic patterns, it analyzes all of the surroundings and everything to give you like the amount and what time it's going to pick you up. Even deliveries for Walmart, Amazon, they had a video on where they were showing where it's an autonomous car coming, the robot gets out of the back, gets your package, walks it, drops it off at your door, and it's like, okay, it's happening, it's out there. Is it good, is it bad? I don't know. It's convenient for a lot. I have some students actually in 9th grade who love Uber Eats for McDonald's. Like, it's like 2 miles from where they live. They're like, oh yeah, I'm like, you're in 9th grade using Uber Eats. And I said, that's artificial intelligence. They're like, we don't care. We just want our McDonald's. Like, but how many of us use Uber or Lyft or those types of things every single day? Speech recognition. Anybody do the voice to text or anything like that on your phones, on your devices? Learning tools, the one I mentioned, like Socrates, having students create things. Also, smartphones. How many of your smartphones or your phones that you have will suggest things for you, or you can set things up for your home now, but it recognizes where you are and makes suggestions. Well, I think that you are in this area, or it looks like you're doing this. How about, and it tells you some kind of a suggestion. Whether or not that's good or bad, personally, I think that's a little bit scary sometimes, but common uses, and this is where I was like, wow, I didn't realize that. Now some of them, of course, Spotify, Netflix, YouTube, it can give you, some suggestions, because what it does is it tracks your typical choices and selections that you make, and it can make recommendations, which sometimes that's not a bad thing, right? If you're like, I'd really like to get a book, I don't know what type of book I would like to get, you go on Amazon, and it filters through all of the books that you've ever looked at or read, and it can make suggestions. Smart home. Anybody use anything with the smart home devices? They can actually, the home can get to know your habits of if you, at a certain period of the day where you're like, oh, it's cold, you turn the heat up, put the air on, so your home knows you. Or the refrigerator can send you the message it looks like you're out of milk, Ed, you should pick milk up on the way home. I don't know, I'm pretty good with getting up and adjusting the thermostat on my own, but it's amazing just to think of the potential for this. Now some of these I think are great. Imagine the amount of time that it would take to do all of this tracking as far as fraud, right? I had an episode with fraud a couple of years ago, And it was a mess for like 4 months of time. They were investigating the calls, everything back and forth, and this goes back a while. But then probably a year ago, I was on a trip and I tried to buy like a $30 dress, and it was declined 3 times, and then my phone rang and it was American Express, and it was like their fraud detection. But it wasn't that somebody was sitting there watching my habits, it was just going through the system, and it was not matching up with like where I was from, the time of day. The amount wasn't bad, it was $30, but those types of services rely heavily on that. And I read something recently about Wikipedia, which, not that I condone my students using that a lot of times, but it uses all of these different bots that go through and filter and make edits all the time, like millions and millions of edits. And each bot is programmed with a specific function. So let's say somebody has a sentence on there, and there's a bot that looks for commas, or misplaced commas, or grammar errors, and they just automatically function versus the humans, the amount of time that it would take. So it definitely does serve to make things faster. It's a big concept, but these are the steps of what it does to work. So think about what we do as educators, or even just in daily life. If we process information, if we're teaching, we get the information from our students, then we have to go through all of these different steps to give them the feedback, to make like an assessment of like what are our next steps. So when it comes to AI, it is able to do that in like seconds, less than seconds sometimes. It takes all that information and just puts it into something that's easier. So as a teacher, I want to see what my students are doing. I want it like hands-on to look at their work, but I also would not necessarily mind being able to do like a quick kind of pulse check and have that feedback a lot faster. So where to start? So here are some ideas for you if you want to test things out. If you want to take a picture of that, doesn't matter. If you're on a device, take a screenshot, doesn't matter. Chatbots for good. IBM Watson, if anybody ever watched like the Jeopardy episode with Watson, but they have where you can create and work through activities. If you're looking at things like project-based learning, design thinking, even empathy is another thing they can learn with this as well. And they're even using chatbots for younger children, older adults, people who are going through like medical challenges and things. They're creating these so that there's an interaction. Some people, especially with like mental health and wellness and mental health issues, I know that they've been using some chatbots so that the people have somebody to interact with, because they've done research that has shown that even if that person has, even if it's just a chatbot, just having that quick conversation interaction is just enough to kind of get somebody to like get courage to talk to somebody else. Google AI experiments is a lot of fun. Has anybody ever used Google AI experiments? There's one that's quick draw, and it'll tell you something to draw. So it might say like a whale. It gives you 20 seconds, and you go through and you try and draw the whale, and as you're drawing it, it's guessing what you're drawing, and it says like, I see a line, I see a this, I see a, oh, it's a whale, and it goes on. So that's a lot of fun to test out just to see how quickly. But in that Google AI experiments, there are like tons of different opportunities and ideas where people have created their own AI experiments. There's some games. My students really like to just do interactive things, and when I do teach about AI, we go over like what it is. I will show that video. I ask them for predictions. We look at some of these different tools, and I really just give them the chance to explore on their own, because there is so much to know, and I don't know all there is, but I'm just curious about like what their impressions are. And I don't want to say like AI is the greatest thing ever, AI is the worst thing ever. Like I would like to get their feedback too and have those conversations. Botsify is another one that they interact with chatbots. It's kind of fun. Not all students like every single thing, so it's nice to have options for every student to try something, but the two that I always have them start with are using the Google AI experiments and then doing that quick draw, just because it's fun. And if you have a chance to do it on your device and check that out, I would definitely recommend that. A couple of other tools, avatars. So students, anybody ever use any of these tools like Telegami or Voki? Am I talking avatar? Those are great for a lot of different reasons. If you have students who are kind of like, I don't really want to speak in front of my peers, being able to create something with one of those and talk would be a great idea for students to build confidence. Plus, it's kind of fun to create their own chatbot. This Web Genius, has anybody ever used the Akinator? This is really interesting. It is a Web Genius. It comes on the screen, and he asks you to think of a character, fictional or real, and then goes through a series of questions. And now everything is kind of programmed in there. And so what you're supposed to do is think of somebody, and then it asks you questions. It might be like, is it an animal? Is it red? Is it this? Is it a superhero? And you keep going through. And the idea is it eventually is supposed to guess who the person was that you were thinking of. And you want to try and think of somebody like, there's no way this genie is going to guess mine. I used Don Quixote. Anybody know Don Quixote? Like, how would this thing get that? 15 guesses. I was like, and you can start to see the pattern where it's like filtering down, getting closer. You're like, oh my goodness, he's going to actually guess. And he got it. I'm like, wow. So we've tried that with my students, and they were trying to like guess their classmates. I'm like, they're not really going to guess their classmates. But it's a lot of fun to do to see how many you can get it. Now, I do have a friend who did this with their class, and I forget who the character was that they picked, but it took like 44 tries. So they were like really excited. They like totally outsmarted almost the Akinator. Elementary students, there are two that I know that friends have used. Geography, there's the Odyssey, and then there's Splash Math. So again, depending on what level you teach, or if you're working with teachers that teach in those levels, you could start with those. This one, lots of information, and I would need like 2 hours to go through all of this with you, but I wanted to at least give you some ideas of where to start. In Pittsburgh, there's the Ready AI Lab. They were actually in the expo hall, if anybody saw them. They have the Cosmo and Calypso robots, and also the AI in a box. But you can go there. Sometimes they offer like training for teachers. I do have a picture of what it looks like in here to show you. But Amazon Lex, you can have students build a conversation. eCraft to Learn has a lot of different activities and just more information you can find about artificial intelligence. The IBM Chatbots for Good is one that I mentioned earlier. The Ready AI Plan, and again, like if you're like, I gotta Google all these, they'll be in my shared document. So, and they're all hyperlinked, so you don't have to type them, and I tell you what they are. But there's lessons that you can do as well. So there's tons of things out there, but the biggest thing is like, where do you begin? I would recommend that Teaching AI book, but even looking just locally, because Pittsburgh does have a lot to offer, especially when it comes to artificial intelligence. This is what Calypso looks like. If you would get the AI in a box, and Dave Turetsky leads this AI for K-12, and I have that on the next screen, but Montour School District also has this, and they have an AI curriculum that they're using in the middle school, so that's why Justin is a great resource for that. I went and toured there, but when you get the AI program, you have the computer, you have the robots, and you have the blocks, and you kind of just like drag and drop and say like, when Cosmo sees, whatever the object is, move or make a sound or pick it up or do whatever. And so students can actually program the robots to kind of move in a warehouse. Montour, I believe, has a robot that can deliver the mail, because you just program it like, when you see the door, like move through, or if you see a box, like pick it up. Each of them, when the robot has like the eyes, so it's kind of hard to see, but I was sitting here at the computer, the robot was there, and it was looking at me, and so it was showing me on the screen, which was kind of like a little bit weird and scary, but it was fun to see how that would work, and I know that they keep adding new things to it, but the idea is they have students create things, and there's even a competition, I think being held in Pittsburgh this year, where students will be creating different activities with artificial intelligence. These are the biggest resources that if you were looking for something to get started for AI, I would recommend. That's the name of the book by Michelle Zimmerman. There are two that I recommend. If you're looking for like things to use in your classroom, in your school, I would recommend her book, because it goes through the definitions, lesson plans, activities, resources, you name it, and gives you a really good understanding of like AI itself, but how to bring it into the classroom, and has student input in that as well. The other book is more like research-based, like the history of AI, where did it start, what are the progressions that it's gone through, what are all the components of AI and machine learning. So if you really want to know like all of the stuff, I did read that book, and it had a ton of information, a lot of really good facts about the progression over the last, say, 60 years. The ISTE course was phenomenal. AI for K-12 is an organization that is working currently in the United States. There is not like a curriculum set for AI. I think 100 schools or so roughly have AI as part of their curriculum, but it's not like this set forth curriculum that exists. So they're working on that. Another site, AI for All, lots of free things. if you read blogs, Getting Smart is one that I write some blogs for, and they do have a whole series on artificial intelligence where they share, and I've written a couple, they share tools, things to get started with, ideas, definitions. Justin has written a couple for them as well. Finland, not that you can get PD credits for this, but Finland has an AI course that they opened up recently, and it's free, so you can at least work through it. You can't get their accreditation with it, but you can go through all the different components of it. And then this WACI is a World Artificial Intelligence Competition for youth, and that's one that will be held in Pittsburgh this year. I think it's in June, possibly July, I forget offhand, but that would be a great space, like if you had time to go and see students and like what their impressions are of AI. So I know that's a lot on AI before I get to the AR VR, but does anybody have any questions? Okay. Yeah.
Will this, I know it's in Nearpod, it's not in this lesson, will your presentation be available for us to go back and click on the links?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And if for some reason it's not like where it should be on, you know, the site, just send me an email or anything, and I'm really good. I'm good but bad with email. Like I can never disconnect, so I will send it to you. It's I made a bit.ly with it, but it was for the last conference. Actually, I could just give you that bit.ly.
Okay.
Yeah. It was TCEA POF. It was like the name of the conference, and then my last name all lowercase. But I can give you that.
It was
EA and then POTH. I made it really easy for me to remember for the last conference. It's the same one, I just keep adding more to it. But yeah, they're all in there. And then again, if you have questions or if you're like, oh, I didn't get that, or I missed that, or can you share that? Absolutely. Okay, AR, VR, MR. Who is using any of these in your classrooms in your schools? No, Ed. All right.
Not me personally, since I'm not.
Yeah, but I know what you mean. Okay, so the simplest definition, augmented reality, you still see your surroundings. So I could put a dinosaur in the middle of the room right now. Most people think of like Pokemon Go. My students would think of Snapchat, but you see the room around you. One thing people like about augmented reality is like you can see what something would look like. Like let's say you wanted to go to IKEA to get furniture. You're like, oh, but I don't want to drive there. They have an app that you could just put it in your kitchen and go, oh, that will look wonderful right there, and you don't have to go to the store. So you still see your world around you. Virtual reality is, you know, you're immersed, not necessarily fully immersed. Most often you could, and you can even do VR just like on your iPads, which you'll see on this, but most often you have some type of a headset or device that's kind of giving you that experience where you don't see the world around you. Google Cardboard was one, not the greatest because, you know, hygiene, the germs, you can't really clean them. Phones don't necessarily fit into them. There was also the old Viewmaster, if you remember, like growing up, the Viewmasters, they had those ones. And then this is a Merge headset, which is probably, I mean, it is my favorite because it's foamy, you can clean it, it has the head mount, whether or not you want to use that. Students who wear glasses, it's easy for them because they can wear it with their glasses. You can even make adjustments, and most phones tend to fit in this one. You can even go higher end. I have an Oculus Go, which is a fully contained, and you don't put your phone in it, it runs on Bluetooth. If you've ever seen the commercials where, I forget who was in the commercial, but he's watching a NBA game with his friends, they're talking, but they're not actually there. They're both just wearing their headsets in their own homes across the country, and they can, you know, simulate that. So virtual reality feels like you're in that experience. Mixed is where it gets really interesting. So you have what, like the Microsoft HoloLens. Those of you wearing glasses, if you imagine, go back to Terminator. Tom Cruise had a movie, Minority Report, years ago, where you might be sitting there and looking at maybe your classroom of students, and through your glasses, you can see all of their information, their grades, if they're under stress or frustrated, any of that could be in front of you. It's really making a difference in things like aviation, the medical field, you name it, the military, because let's say you have planes and somebody needs to go out and fix the plane. Well, with mixed reality, you have the glasses and you still see the plane because you have that space, but instead of having to like go get out the book or pull up the computer, somebody can have the glasses on and everything they need as far as like the engine parts or anything they need is right in front of them in that physical space. So they kind of merge. Medical field is using this a lot to get rid of a lot of the equipment. Instead of having all the machines that show the vitals and kind of crowding up that space, they are now able to use the glasses and be able to see all of the vitals like in front of them, like, you know, hovering in space on the wall. So it's kind of interesting to do that.
Is that like Iron Man, his helmet?
Yes. Yeah, that's a new one, thanks. I'm always like Terminator, iRobot, Minority Report, but yeah, absolutely. This was just a quick question in Nearpod. I was just curious because I have a bunch of different AR VR tools, and you know, there's never enough time. I did this as a 3-hour workshop just on AR VR in Miami last month, and I thought, wow, that's a really long time, and I couldn't believe how fast that time went. But I was kind of interested to know what your favorite tool is, if anybody has one, and if you haven't used it yet. But has anybody used MergeCube? You're using Nearpod now. Nearpod qualifies.
Is HP Reveal still a thing?
No, it's, well, yes and no, because it was Erasmus and then HP Reveal, and I think, and I don't know if now if it was January, February, but it was kind of fading out, and I felt really bad because at a conference earlier this month, so a lot of people were saying how they were creating their yearbooks and having these pop up like with their yearbooks and videos and all this stuff, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, and then somebody said, did you know, and I felt so bad because the one woman looked like she was gonna cry because like all of those memories now like gone, and people were saying like, is there a backup plan? There kind of is, not quite the same as HP Reveal, but that's the scary thing about some of these, is like, you know, if you build and you create a lot of things in them and they don't last, which is why you always have to focus on the purpose, like what are you doing? There's always going to be a different tool, it may not be that same one. Even, you know, technology like pictures, I'll still print pictures. People are like, why do you do that? I'm like, well, what happens? They're on your phone. Okay, well, what happens if they're like zapped from wherever they're held, like in space sometimes? I have like 4 cameras worth on my phone at this point. People make fun of me, but they'll see, oh, Flipgrid AR is another great one too. Okay, so that helps. So first one, Nearpod is real quick. You've all heard of it, you've been using it. This is just actually where I started with the VR. It was a game changer in my classroom, just some images for my students. The reason being, I taught about Spanish in South America, and they were looking at pictures in a book. Like, it's kind of hard to see on here, but on your device you can probably see like, and it was a black and white, oh, look at Machu Picchu there, and they're like, oh, that's great. It's a black and white squiggly line. It's beautiful. But when I was able to take them and put the image right in their hands with Nearpod, we were like, oh my gosh, like this is amazing. I mean, seeing pictures is great, videos is great, but when they can actually hold it up and look at it and then come to their own understanding about it, ask questions, be curious, it makes a difference. There is a code. If you don't have a Nearpod account, you can use, and it's pretty easy, and that will be in that document too, but it's just my first name, my middle initial, and my last name. But that gives you an upgrade to gold for like 3 months to kind of try out, because they do have a lot of virtual field trips. If anybody works with students who are looking for colleges, career exploration, they have a lot where they actually went, I think there's 60 universities now where students can go and look and check out, you know, what's it like to go to Oxford and look on the campus and view around. So it's fun for me to tell you about it, but I'd rather at least show you. So let's imagine, you know, you want to go, anybody know where you are? Yeah. So teach French, doesn't matter, whatever you teach, like these are all built in. So for me, when I started with the VR, I started with Nearpod, and my students being able to kind of look, not that I was teaching them about France, I just picked this one really quickly, but no matter what you teach, you could find something in this. It could become almost like a scavenger hunt. You as the teacher pick the pictures that you want, and then decide like, what kind of questions could you ask? Are you teaching elementary and you're looking at shapes? Are you teaching history and looking at structures? People, culture, families, weather, anything, but being able to kind of scan around and explore, it made a difference for students. So if you want something like, because sometimes some of these topics, you're like, wow, that's like, I don't know, there's so much. You just have to pick one thing. So if you pick Nearpod, I'm sorry, I made you dizzy on that one. If you pick Nearpod, it's easy because it's already in there for you. If you're using Google presentations or anything else, you can just put those into your Nearpod. So I picked 2 just to share. I did that one, and then I did this one just to do the contrast. Now these pictures all come from 360 cities. You know, so you don't have to worry about like going out on the internet and finding them. They're all built within Nearpod. You just have to search for them and then pick whichever one. So again, I mean, you can ask a lot of questions, but for students, they can look around, be curious, and ask questions, which adds to the conversation even more. So that is Nearpod, very quickly.
Is there a big difference between like your students putting on the glasses or just using the iPad like yours or moving around?
It's not a ton. I mean, I have a mix. Some of my students, like, first of all, their phones, some of them are so big with their cases, they don't fit. Some of them get a little bit like dizzy when they're doing that. And sometimes, especially with using Nearpod, now if you have like 5 or 6 or 7 different experiences where they're looking, then it's worth it to have it on. But sometimes for me, like in Spanish, I'm doing them like, it's not every single one, and so they need to interact, so the time it takes to take that out. But it doesn't make a difference. I mean, they have fun whether they're on their, computers, their laptops, netbooks, iPads, phones, or anything, yeah.
The iPads are better for little kids because there's some controversy about the headsets and about, because it has the band on the top and it's meant for an adult head.
Oh,
So
right.
it's down and it causes the eyes not to focus the right way. So
Okay.
there is controversy.
Yeah, which, I find like there's always going to be,
Yeah.
like you can't avoid it, there's always the good and the bad. And,
One
but it's,
size fit all concept. don't
Yeah.
I use
fit
the
all.
Viewmaster that you actually physically hold,
yeah,
and that seems to work. You get rid of that
right,
lack of same sizeness.
yeah. And two, just, the eyes and all of those concerns too with,
Well, I have trouble with my glasses on,
yeah. And that's why I like the merge one, because the students that do have the glasses, like they can still, because when they take the glasses, they're like, I can't see anything, but with that one, they actually fight over those ones, so.
Like I put on the Google Cardboard, and Google Cardboard makes me dizzy. Is that the same thing, or is that just because I'm using such a low level?
I probably,
If you see if your peripheral picks up still, it's like your car, if you're
Yeah.
driving, you get more of that
right.
movement.
So the more it's around, it's definitely better, yeah. And I would, in the Google Cardboard, those were like 15 the last time I got them, and they came flat cardboard. We had to assemble them.
Yeah.
I couldn't figure it out. I gave them to the kids. They're like, this is terrible. But the red one, like the merge, originally were 60, and then they went on sale. I think they're like 40 now. But sometimes they have specials, and so it's cheaper. But if you think like cardboard, how many of those would you go through in a year versus like buying that? It's definitely
How much
worth
is
it.
the Oculus one?
The one that I got, the Oculus Go, I got the 24 gig, and I think when I bought it, it was $199. I think they're $179 now, and I think the 32 gig was $250-ish, but I think it's a little bit lower than that now. Yeah.
And with that, it runs through Bluetooth, so you bring something up on yours and
Yeah.
send it to that, or it picks it up?
Oh, it's all in, so like when it runs through your Bluetooth, whatever your network is on, and then whatever you have in there, like you can download onto it, and so then you can open up like different experiences, yeah. So I had, like my background was the Golden Gate Bridge, and it was beautiful, and so one of my 8th graders was like, this is amazing, oh my gosh, it feels so real, and then he looked down and he screamed so loud, people came running in because he was like standing on the side of the mountain. It was just so real because you're like so immersed in that. But it's great. Like I have 2 for my own 2, but I have 2 at my school that we use as well, and it's just different. Some people, you have to be careful with the content of some of the things that are on, especially if it's your own personal one.
Mhm.
But it is nice to not have to worry about the phone fitting in because it runs off of whatever. So
Yeah, and putting your personal phone into something you're handing to students.
I know.
That kind of bothers me. So how many of the VR experiences can you fit on 16 gigs or whatever it is?
Yeah, there's a lot of different ones. It depends on what they do. Some of them end up being like those short little movie clips that you move through and interact. I had a good amount on mine, but I haven't used it in, it's been a little while since I've used it because I've been using other things. But I think you can fit a good amount. That's what I wasn't sure about at first, but then I ended up getting, I think I got the 32 first, and then the 16 went on sale, or vice versa. Or the 24 went on sale, yeah. But I think a good amount. Okay, 3D Bear is one that is pretty good for if you want lesson plans and things to start with. It is not, there are some free things that you can do with it. You can have students create on their phones. You can also join in the classroom, but it is paid. But I just like to share it because of what you can do with it. And if you teach different levels, like you can filter through based on, like if you're teaching math, social emotional learning, you got ELA you want, or different grade bands, or even based on lesson length. What it looks like whenever you do create is you can have different objects. So I was doing a presentation, and so it's augmented reality. Somebody opened it up on their phone because they like to try these tools out, and placed the big giant dinosaur behind me. You can add different characters, some of which will move, but the fun thing about it is you can have students create something and then narrate a story. So even if you think like, I really don't know how to use this, maybe you teach reading and your students are doing a book report and you want them to do some kind of a summary, and instead of writing about it, you want them to talk about it. They could create a scene, do a screen recording, share the video. It could be uploaded to YouTube if that's an option depending on their age. But it's really nice to be able to just have something that you can create with. Again, not totally free. You can use it on your phone for iOS and Android and create really quickly. It is fun to see what you can do with the students, like creating and doing the screen recordings for themselves. Other ideas that you could use, so in last year I was in San Antonio and we went to the Alamo. My friend Jamie said, let's go to the Alamo and let's make 3D bears. So we went and she put all of these like prehistoric animals on there, and she narrated the story, recorded it, and it was just like fun to do. So just think about, what are some things that you do in your classroom or that your teachers do, and that you could have these objects. They have animals, they have shapes, they do holiday themes. Some of them are dancing, like dancing bears, dancing apples. You can change the colors of them. But even as a teacher, or if you're a tech coach or something, like you could, if you want teachers to get on board with some of these, you could create like a welcome video. You could have students do an about me and create something that represents like what they're about. It's just about like, not that you have to have the best idea, because usually the students have the best ideas is what I find, but just knowing what the tool does and that it's accessible on different devices. CoSpaces. Has anybody used CoSpaces? Okay, CoSpaces it has changed over the last couple of years. You can use CoSpaces in combination with the Merge Cube, because you can actually place and create this whole virtual world onto Merge Cube. And if you look, and this is why I wanted to have the pictures in your hands, but if you see like the bottom images, those are ones my students created. So all kind of different things that you can put into them, but some ideas that you can do. Oh, one other thing, you don't have to use the viewers. You can look at them just on the screen. We did this in my Spanish class and had them create stories about their childhood, and then when they came into class, they went around and they looked at every single other group's project. And that group, that year, I couldn't believe how much they retained that content as opposed to prior years, because they were creating these different spaces, and it just, like, they remembered picking certain things to put in, narrating in Spanish, putting the words in, and moving it, like all the characters around. Things that you can use it with, any of these things that you do, it's not specific to a content area. It doesn't matter if you're teaching math. Some of my students wanted to do parkour, which I had no idea what that meant. They're like, you're a technology teacher, you don't know what parkour is? And they show me, I go, oh, I know what that is. I just didn't know that it was called parkour. So they wanted to make, well, they can totally do that with this. And I have a student who all year, last year, everything that I did, it didn't matter what I did, he hated everything, and he told me that he hated everything every single day. Like, hate this, it's boring, it's terrible. We did CoSpaces, and he really didn't say much, and I'm like, I wonder what's going on. Well, then about 2 weeks after that, I got a call from his mom, and she said, I gotta tell you, I have never seen him do anything like this. And I said, what? She said, all he wants to do is make CoSpaces. I said, are you serious? She said, yeah. I go, he's hated everything all year. So I logged in, I could see them working. I logged into their account, and I saw that he had created 18 different CoSpaces projects in a period of like 2 weeks, because that's all he wanted to do. So the idea is like, just find something for like each student, and they're not all going to like the same thing, but being able to give them opportunities to choose something. And for this boy, that was like the thing. And so it was really great to see that he created all these parkour experiences. The nice thing about this is that some schools do have Chromebooks, and there are not a lot of things that you can use with AR, VR on Chromebooks, not yet, especially because of the way the camera is. But CoSpaces is one that you can now use with Chromebooks, and you can explore in different ways. You don't have to use the headsets. Ideas, the Merge Cube, what you can do is if you have students, they can create a space that looks like a scene, or you can even have like an interactive story where on each side it's narrating parts of the story and what happened. And I do want to show you a couple of these things demo-wise, since I have this open, just to give you a quick idea, and I know we're almost out of time. But But what it looks like, you can have students collaborate and create these different spaces, kind of like how you can do with a Google presentation. And they put together a project, and then they can go through and play it and explore it, and it's really fun to like just look at the things they created in VR. But you can also take whatever they've created and put it into the space. So if they made like a farm and it's in VR, you can put it into the real world and actually walk around it, which is pretty amazing. Ideas for the classroom, so any of these things that you might do if you're asking students to talk about like something in history, an adventure, tell a story, narrate something they read in a book, this is a great tool to use for that. Let me just check one thing here. I'm going to skip through and show you the merge cube. So anybody use the merge cube? Yeah. The merge cube has different sides, kind of like a hologram in a sense. If you have four students could interact with it in different ways based on each side, depending on what app they had on their phone. So if you're looking at the pictures, like I had one student who wanted to play the sushi game, one was doing like a Jack in the Box. There are anatomy and things like science, they have this whole platform now. So students who are dissecting a frog don't necessarily need to dissect a frog because they can have it on the merge cube and interact with it and like pull it apart. Students also have the opportunity with the merge cube because of the immersive reader. So if you have students who are learning a foreign language, you can tie this into those classes as well because they can listen to the narration in the language that they're learning. And so a student, as they're holding a merge cube, it's like they're holding the earth or they're holding a volcano in their hand, and they can learn about it in that way, like in their hands, and get a better understanding of what that actually looks like. And I want to do one more. Actually, I'm going to skip that one because I want to show you.
Is it you can buy the merge cubes, but then you can also print out the merge cubes?
You can.
And then does that become free at that point, or do you still have to get in?
There are some free apps. There is also an object viewer, but they have a Merge EDU platform, and so they're moving away from some of the free ones because for a while when the merge cubes went on sale for like $1, people like bought them. So if I do this, Alexander, but there are some free ones, but I did print a big one and it still works as long as like whatever you're using works, like the app itself. So here I have Alexander, and if I want to, I can place, instead of having to use the cube, I can place it in the real world. So there it is. Cube's there, but there's Alexander, and there you all are.
So what app are you using with that now, Merge app?
This one is Museum Viewer. Yeah, and then there's like Mr. Body. But you can, whatever you would create in that co-spaces, which I showed, you could then have students, and some of them have music, but it's kind of fun because if students, especially if you're doing things like shapes or the earth, then you can look, and when you rotate it, you're like, oh, the lungs, and it gives you information on different parts of the body, so students can learn more about it, pop open the heart, and look and rotate, and get a better idea. So, if you hold that in your hand, it's like more immersive, and you're like, oh, I can see which part of the heart, or I can associate with that rather than looking at like a one-dimensional image, or like, oh, that's a nice video, but like, what does it look like in my hands, kind of a thing. So Merge is fun for that reason, but even if you don't have access to a lot of resources, buying one, 4 students can interact, have stations in your classroom. Another one that I want to show you before two more that I definitely want to show you, because you asked about HP Reveal, and I got out of the Nearpod because I wanted to at least show you some demo here. So enter AR, we'll see if it works. So Thing is another one that is kind of like that, and you can create and record your screen. Sometimes this doesn't work depending on the Wi-Fi, but I picked the Jack of the Beanstalk, and so if it works, see the green? It'll swivel and it'll put a Jack in the Beanstalk and it'll go up on the screen, and then you could narrate some kind of a story, of course. Oh wait, it's not the Jack of the Beanstalk. Not sure what it. Oh, it's apparently the tortoise and the hare racing around. Yeah. Oh, but he has a jetpack on, so that's cool. Okay, I think he's gonna win.
So which one was this again?
This one is Thing.
Thing.
Yeah, and the cool thing about it is you can have targets. So if you have like a trigger image, how you could do, I use the cover of a book and I send it to them, and now anybody that scans that cover of that book can then see what I created was like an animated or animated, whatchamacallit, video that I had done. I put on YouTube actually first, and then they're like, you don't need to do this, we can just totally do this without the YouTube because we made it a trigger image. But I'll show you what that actually looks like.
That's also maybe.
Yeah, so I used Tara Martin's book cover, and then I made this background, and I recorded it, I put the text on the screen, and so that was all mine. So now if anybody, like if you opened up Amazon and you had the Thing app and you scanned it on your computer screen, you would see that pop up, which is kind of like, how does that even happen? So that's Thing. One other one I wanted to show you is Figment, and I know I have like 2 minutes, which is good. So Figment AR is augmented and virtual reality. And so you have, this is in my living room, and it's clearly not snowing, and it's clearly not there, but it has portals. So you can have a portal that when you walk to it, then you're in the portal and you enter like virtual reality. So here I am walking toward, you just gotta kind of imagine, here's when I was recording this as I was doing it. So now I step into it, and as I turn around, I don't see my kitchen anymore. So I have to find out where in the world was that portal. And my 8th graders, when they do this, are like, Mrs. Cove, help. I'm like, why are you on the floor? I'm trapped in a portal. I'm like, you're just on the floor in the classroom. But there's different portals that are already in there. It's free. It is fun to create. It's on Android and iOS. Now you think, oh, that's fun, but what else do you do with it? Why not look at what's in there and make it a scavenger hunt for your students? Like, what do you see? Where do you think they are? What are the people doing? How do you get back out of your portal? But there you go back in, and now you see, like, there's my TV and the snow. There's another portal. It's very quick to create with, and what it looks like, and I'll show you in the last second here, because it's kind of fun, is you open up, so there's your screen, and if I want to pop in, I always like the jack-o'-lantern, because if you watch him for a second, you might see, if anybody was a Michael Jackson fan back in like the mid-80s, you might be able to recognize the dance that he's doing. Yeah. And you can put music behind it. Now, if you put a portal in, if I click this one, it'll put the window up, and now I pull it closed, and as I go in, and I turn around, I just lost it, I went too far. Normally when I go into it, I get trapped into it, and I have to find out, like, where is the portal? So it's a dual AR and VR, because you can still see the room, which is the augmented reality portion, but once you go into the portal, then you are in the VR. So like if I open that really big, it should, oh yeah, so there he is. It does actually work normally. I think it might be a thing with the network too, because that happened the last time. But you can have students add different characters, different effects, if you wanted to have fireworks or snow or anything like that, but narrating a story. Put music in the background.
All that's free
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
And you don't need an account.
Nope.
And you can save those?
You can save them, yep. Whenever you do it, like you have on the bottom, you could do like a screenshot, but like I was on the beach one time, and like, you know, the portal of the beach, and I'm like doing this, and I showed it, and I said, do you think I'm on the beach? And people were like, yeah. I go, I was in the portal, like you couldn't tell. But I've even gone for a walk, you know, in your neighborhoods or for your schools, like have students narrate, like, welcome to whatever this town is, like, oh my goodness, look at the pumpkin doing the thriller dance. But yeah, Figment is free. Thing is also free.
Is it Figment?
Figment, yeah. Figment AR. If anybody's ever been to Epcot, there was like Figment. He was my favorite characters. Like, yeah, so Figment. I didn't talk about Google Expeditions because there wasn't enough time, but somebody said Google Expeditions. That's another one I would recommend, because you can take students on a VR trip and you don't have to know all there is to know about the place, because whenever you download it and you act as a guide, it gives you, if you've never used this, they join, and as long as they're on your same network and you start the tour, it gives you your whole script. So you're like, oh, if you look to the left, the Taj Mahal, blah, blah, and you go through, and they're like, wow, you know everything. Meanwhile, like, they don't know that you have everything on it.
Do they see?
They just see the image.
And is that image virtual, like an image?
It is, and so they'll look around, and when they're logged in, you will see like little white smiley faces, and you can go, okay, everybody look to the left, and you see all the faces, but you can also hold down and see how that lit up. So you can also make another point of like a focal point in it, and each one, and this is also free. Each one does have, you know, all of these different questions, and then they have the different locations. So as you go through, like the mausoleum or whatever it is, and they even have career explorations too, which is kind of cool. But also free, and the students, I had some students who actually wanted to lead the tour themselves. They're like, wait, let me see how to do this, which I thought was kind of cool because they were reading and reinforcing their own learning, and also adding some fun to it, and was giving me some ideas. But I mean, there are.
Can that be embedded into a Nearpod expedition?
No.
Nearpod has their own, I know.
Yeah, you couldn't. The only thing that you could do, I mean, there are a lot of things that you can actually push into the Nearpod, but if you use Tour Creator,
Yeah.
you can make your own tour. But yeah, Google Expeditions you can't.
With your own tour though, it's not necessarily, I mean, like you can spin around,
Right.
but you can't,
Yeah. I mean, there are some that you can pop in there, but there's. I just made a list the other day, and I had like 50 new AR tools that are out there. It's like, how do you keep up with all of them? But I would say, I mean, some of them right now, the biggest one, like Nearpod is easy to start with. Google Expeditions, great to start with. The Merge Cube is easy to get started with the AR. Oh, and I have some Nearpod things up here, so please don't leave without taking like a webcam thing or a pen. But as far as creation, like, not that you need a ton of devices. Like if you had 4 devices, you could have 4 different things, like a station with Nearpod lesson, a station where kids would create with Figment. You could have a group with Google Tour. The CoSpaces is also great. And the 3D Bear, I mean, there are seriously a ton of them out there to use, especially with the different apps. Merge is making a lot more things with it. So with the curriculum embedded, now it comes with a price, but it depends on your school and all that. So I know that's like, I wish I had like 2 more hours to talk about this stuff. There's so much, but I'd rather you at least have like a bunch of different ideas. So thanks for coming, thanks for staying. If you would like any of these Nearpod stickers or really cool pens or webcam covers, by all means, please take them because, you know, I'll bring them. I'll just set them here like on the chairs and you can grab them. And if you have questions, let me know. I'll make sure that document is there with all of the links to the AI stuff and the AR, VR. But does anybody have any questions?
Where would you put that link?
That's what I need to figure out because the presenter materials, I should have it there.
you log in as a presenter.
Yeah, I'm
And
gonna
then at the bottom
check
you
now.
put a link or you can upload.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I will make sure that's there because, I will do that right now, actually. It should be there, because I thought I put it there, but you never know. But it will be there in the next 3 minutes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you
Thanks
know
for
how
coming.
long, like, does PDC leave those up there for very long?
I think they do.
I don't know.
It stays there for a while.
Yeah.
Alright, sharing a link now, okay, it will be there for you. And then my contact information is there too, so if you have questions, let me know. Have a good rest of the day, thank you.
Thank you.
So.